our speaker, Breana Curry. She is a Detroit native. She has a passion for our youth. She has a passion for our communities, and she has a passion for finance. So we are happy to have her on today because she is just here to help us get it together. No matter where you're starting from, whether you are, in your 30s and you just want to start fresh, or if you are a young person where you're starting completely from scratch, it's just so important that we always revisit the budgeting basics. Like, where are we starting from, especially before we get into a point where we're making a lot of money, before we have a lot of income? Like, how do we properly utilize that income and make it work for us? So I'm going to let Bree give a full spill of herself and more about Curry Financials, and then we will get into our lesson for today. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar. As Brianna said, my name is Brianna, and I'm from Detroit, born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I am from the West Side, 7 Mile in Wyoming to be exact. So right next to that famous beauty supply store we all know on the corner. I moved around a lot in elementary school, but I went to Bovie Middle School and I graduated from Renaissance High School in 2008. I went on to Michigan State and I got my bachelor's of criminal justice, and I also got a bachelor's in human development and family studies because I've always liked to help people. So I thought being a homicide detective, I got my bachelor's in criminal justice because I wanted to be a homicide detective. And so I shadowed a detective for a couple years in Detroit, and then I'm like, I was tired of going to crime scenes, seeing young Black men, women, and families having to go through this. So I went on and went for my master's of social work because I felt like that would be a more proactive approach to our issues than the reactive approach of being a detective. So I went on to get my master's of social work, and I'm here now in Atlanta. I really have a passion for social work because growing up in Detroit and really growing up in the city, I was able to witness a lot. And that made me realize that people are the way they are for reasons, whether it's experiences that they've gone through, something they've seen, something they've been exposed to. Nobody just wakes up and, well, sometimes they do, but most of the time, the actions or the behaviors that you have, they come from somewhere. So being from Detroit and really growing up around just a lot, it made me have a different type of compassion for people. So that's where the whole social work thing came from. And that is me in a nutshell.
Awesome. So what led you to launching Curry Financials? What was that moment where you were like, this is what I need to do? And what was the first step you took to do that?
So like I said, I graduated from grad school December 2015. And I moved to Atlanta March of 2016. But when I moved, I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to stay. I stayed with two of my line sisters, and we're just kind of figuring it out. I had a plan. I had a savings account, but I didn't have it all figured out. So I got this contract with the nonprofit, and I became a financial coach. And I thought that it was just going to pay the bills. Like, literally, I just didn't have anything at the time. I had been in Atlanta, I think, for 3 months at that time. And so I started financial coaching. It was in the homelessness department, and I was working with formerly homeless veterans. So we would literally house the veterans and help them get employed. And once they got employed, they would come to me, and I will help them with budgeting. I will help them either get a credit score because they didn't have one yet, or repair the credit score that they had, and then teach them about saving. So once I realized how much that helped them and how important it is just to know how to manage your money, I was like, duh, like, why don't we learn this at a younger age? Why haven't someone explained this to me thoroughly? And then I realized maybe because my mom didn't know, or my dad didn't know, or my grandma didn't know, because we were not given this information. And so now that we are enlightened and we have technology and we're able to teach ourselves a lot, I was like, let me run with this. So that's where Curry Financials came from. I said, I want to start my own business. I want to focus on youth, and the rest is history. Now I'm here.
Awesome. So in teaching both youth and adults, what are like some of the most common misconceptions about money in general?
Well, especially with youth. My focus being on, well, young adults rather. One of the major misconceptions is they're too young to know right now. But
Mm-hmm.
I honestly feel like if you learn early on right now, some stuff may go over your head because
Yeah.
you may not be thinking about getting a credit card, or you may not be thinking about creating a budget, but maybe 2-3 years from now, when you go to college and they try to give you your first credit card, you'll remember, oh, I remember I was on that webinar and they told me don't go above 30% of my credit limit. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the first thing, is just thinking that young adults or teens are too young to start learning. Another thing is people feel like I don't have a lot of money right now, so I can't really budget. When in reality, that's when you need to budget the most, because then
Right.
put your numbers down, figure out how much money you need to make so that when you're looking for employment or when you're looking to launch your business, you know what you're going after. So those are the main two things I hear, and I'm just here to push back.
Awesome. So I remember you mentioned something like about like family and not talking about finances early and things like that. Was that your life when you were in high school? Were you talking about money early? Like who was the first person to talk to you about money? How old were you when that happened?
I actually just realized this as I was reflecting these past couple of weeks, but in high school, no, I
Mhm.
wasn't thinking about finances at all because my mom, I was taken care of and I didn't really have to. But after I graduated, like I said, June 2008. July of 2008, my boyfriend at the time told me to open up a credit card account, or open up an account. And he taught me how to use the card, just spend a little bit, and then, he would pay it off. Like, this is you building credit. And
Mhm.
I didn't know that, I was really learning a life skill at that time. I kind of took it for granted, but that's where it started. So I was establishing credit right after high school. But when I went to college, my credit was still good, but I messed up on student loans. So
Oof.
it wasn't
Oof.
until after I graduated from college,
Uh-huh.
moved to Atlanta, and like really got into financial coaching, that I realized it's way bigger than just credit. It's way bigger than just budgeting. It's not compartmentalized like that. Like, it all
Right.
flows together. And so
Right.
the answer to the question, I got serious once I moved and once I started working in the actual position.
So would you consider like student loans being your biggest financial lesson of adulthood?
Yes.
I will say it's the same for me. Like, definitely, it was one of those things where I was like, I signed on that dotted line way too quick, but also I was allowed to sign on that line like way too quick. Like, I didn't really know what I was signing off on, and that's okay. Like, Mom, if you're watching this, like, I don't blame you. We didn't know, we didn't know, but really, like, that was one of those things where it was just like, I didn't realize until it was over, until, what was it, 6 months after you graduate, when they're like, hey, here's your bill.
Right.
And you're making this much money, but they're asking for this much money back. And you're like, whoa, that's a car note, or that's rent.
Right.
And so it's so important for us to even understand early, like we're doing now, because when you do sign your name on this dotted line, you're the one responsible for paying this back.
Yes.
Nobody else
Right.
is responsible for paying it back. So I think that it's very important that we're here and we're talking about this today, and that we have an expert that's willing to share so much with us today. And once again, if you're just joining, you can ask a question in the chat box if you feel led to do so. And we will get to it at the end of the discussion. Brianna has introduced herself as the CEO and founder of Curry Financials. And so she is going to be leading us in a brief overview of just the basics of how to get our budgeting together, how to save, the basics about credit, like the things that we just really never talked about. And a lot of people are having these conversations with their kids at the dinner table, and a lot of us didn't grow up with having those conversations at the dinner table. So we're putting it out there now. Brianna's going to share a beautiful PowerPoint with us that we can share with you following the webinar so that you can utilize it for yourself. And look back on, what she said. And if you have questions, we'll make sure we share her information with you so that you can contact her in the future. But I'm going to let her go ahead and get started. And like I said, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and write in the chat box.
Sounds good. Let me. Okay, so again, thanks for tuning in. I hope we have a couple more people on now, but I'll go ahead and get started with our content for today. So of course, this is about budgeting 101, but we'll talk about credit, saving, and we'll also talk about paying for your education after high school. Let's get started. I just wanted to jump straight to the chase. I wanted to start with credit because a lot of times that is what people want to hear about. They don't really want to hear about a budget starting out, but I just want to make it make sense how in order to get good credit, you have to know how to budget. So we'll go through credit first. I'll explain everything, and then we'll connect that to why budgeting is important. So starting off, what is credit? And credit is basically borrowing someone else's money. So when you use a credit card, it's an agreement between you and the bank that allows you to use their money for a little while as long as you pay it back. So credit cards are literally borrowing someone else's money to pay for something now, and then you want to pay them back later. And your credit score is basically your adult report card. So your credit score is grading you on how well you can borrow money and pay back and how responsible you are with borrowing and paying back. So a credit card, remember, is you borrowing money, and a credit score is pretty much your grade on how well you borrow money and pay it back. How do you establish credit? So I know we have a couple people on here that may be younger than 18. And so the first one is really for, it's not only for the younger participants, but even older adults, you can become an authorized user on someone's account. The reason I put the caution stickers there is because it's very, very risky. And the reason why, when you become an authorized user on someone's account, the way that looks is they have a credit card, they put your name on the account, and every time they pay their bill, you get a couple kudo points, like good job. If they miss a payment though, that will negatively affect you. So that's why you have to be very, very careful if you become an authorized user on someone's account, because the good history will go on your credit report. The bad history will also go on your credit report. So you're taking a risk. Make sure that they have a steady job. Make sure that they have a good credit history already. Make sure that you really, really trust them before you ask them to become an authorized user. I'm not sure if we have parents on the line, but just FYI, if you do put your daughter or your son on your card, it doesn't mean you have to give them the physical card. So becoming an authorized user just gives them history from the transactions that you make, but you don't actually have to give them a credit card if you're concerned that they may spend too much or not, pay back or anything like that. So, and technically paying back isn't their responsibility. It's not a joint account. They're just an authorized user. So that's the first way you can start establishing credit, is asking someone if you can become an authorized user on their account, but be very, very, very careful with that. One more thing I want to mention about that is some banks, if you become an authorized user and say, for example, the person whose account you're on, they lose their job, you ask them, you can ask them to take me off. You don't have to, it's not like a forever type of commitment. If something goes wrong and you want to be removed from the account, you can, but some banks will also remove the history that you created while you were an authorized user. So that's good to know. You would just want to ask that question before you are removed, because it could erase all of the history that you gain by being on the card. Second way is applying for a secure credit card. And what that is basically you just giving the bank money up front. If you want a $300 credit card, you're giving them $300 up front, and they feel secure because they know if you do not pay them, they can just pull from the money that you gave them. So it's kind of like a security deposit. So once you start spending properly, you're borrowing the money, you're paying it back, borrowing, paying it back. After about 6 months or so, each bank is different, but after a couple months and they see positive history, or it may be a year, they'll refund the deposit that you gave them up front, and that will be your money to spend at that point. But in the meantime, while you're trying to establish your credit history, you can't touch that money. It's basically like a security deposit, like I said. Then the third way is applying for a credit builder loan. So a credit builder loan is very similar to a secure credit card. The main difference is you get the entire loan up front. Now, you don't get the physical cash money in your hand. It's in an account. And what you do is you pay a little bit on the loan each month. Every time you make a payment, they report it to the credit agencies. So that's how you start establishing good credit. You may not have that $300 to give them up front for the secure credit card. So an alternative to that will be to get the credit builder loan. Well, they will give you the $300, for example, and then you pay a little bit of the $300 each month. Now, with the credit builder loan, that does charge interest, so that's one of the differences. But I don't want to get too much into the details because I just want to do like more so an overview, because I really want you all to walk away with the most important tips for today. So the next thing I want to talk about is, how is my credit score determined? This is the way credit scores are calculated. The reason I put this the light blue first, 30% amounts owed. If you don't remember anything else from this webinar, please remember this part, 30%. That is, I have to share my screen, y'all, because it's really this serious. 1 second. No, I'll just speak from the heart. Okay, really listen, 30%. Let's take Brianna, for example. Brianna is Comerica, and I'm speaking of Brianna, the facilitator. Detroit speaks Brianna, not myself. Brianna is Comerica. Brianna has a shoebox with $300 in it, and I know she has it available for me because she told me whenever you need it, just let me know. Now follow me. This is how credit agencies look at your 30% utilization rate and the amounts that you owe. So Brianna has this money. And so I come to Brianna and I say, let me hold $50. So she gives it to me. Thank you. So the next week I pay her back. Okay, we good. I'm back at zero. Then the next week I say, can I borrow $50 again? She gives it to me. The next week rolls around. I don't pay her like I said I was. Next week rolls around. I pay it back. So she had to wait a little bit. So she kind of skeptical, and she's like, all right. So now balance back at zero. I'll borrow another $50. Thank you. Next week, Brianna, can I borrow 25? I know I still owe you 50, but let me borrow 25 more. She's like, you still owe me 50, but okay, here you go. So now my balance with Bree is $75. Next month, so my paycheck, I get my paycheck, I pay her 25 on the 75 that I owe her. So now I have a balance of $50. The next week rolls around, Brianna, now I need to borrow $100. So she's like, whoa, you still owe me $50. So why are you asking for more money? That is how creditors and banks look at how much money you owe. They will give you a credit card, and your maximum the maximum on your card may be $300, but you are not supposed to spend over 30% of that amount. So if your credit card is $300 in your mind, your credit limit is $90. You're never supposed to go over that. And that's one of the main things I see when people's credit score is messed up, is because of that. They think, I have this credit card, it's $1,000. I pay my bill on time. I'm not sure why my score is so low. And that's why they like, because you keep swiping, you keep borrowing, and you're not paying us back the total amount that you owe us before you swipe again. So 30%, please remember 30%. The next thing is payment history, and that's 35% of your credit score. So just paying on time, that's all that means. Credit mix is 10% of your credit score, and that's just having different types of credit. So you may have a secured loan, you may have a gas card, you may have a Macy's card. Don't go too crazy, and I'll get to the bottom where it has new credit. So don't just apply for a bunch of credit cards to have a good credit mix, but over time they want to see that you can manage different types of credit properly. So that's 10% of your credit score. 15% of your credit score is the length of credit history. So how long have you had credit? How long have you had a credit card? Remember, this is your adult report card, so they need something to grade you off of. If they don't have much to grade you on and you believe cash is king still, and all you know, every time you make a purchase, you use cash, they don't know what you do with your money because they have no proof of knowing. So the length of credit history, the longer your accounts are open, the better, because that's 15% of your credit score. So if you have an account that's open, you don't really use it that often. Say, for example, you have a Target card, a Target charge card, and you don't really use it, I would recommend not to close it. Keep it open. Maybe just buy a pack of tissue from Target every now and then just to keep it active, because if it's inactive for too long, they will cut it off. But don't close the account, because then that'll impact your average length of credit history. The next thing is new credit. So that's 10%. And that's just inquiring for new credit. So when you give someone your social security number and they run your credit, that'll be a hard inquiry, which means they ran your credit report to see your adult report card. They ran your credit report to see how well you borrow and pay money back. And so that's 10% of your score, because when you get new credit, again, it's a red flag, because credit is borrowing money. They're wondering, why are you borrowing money right now? So if you open 3 credit cards at a time, 3 credit cards at one time, red flags go up, because they're like, what's going on? Why do you need to borrow all this money? You don't have a savings account. You don't properly budget your money for you to pull it from somewhere else. Why do you need to borrow this money? So that 10% for new credit is also very important, because you only want to borrow credit or use credit when it's needed or when it makes sense to do so. So you either strategizing and you are using your credit card because you know, when I make these purchases and I pay it back, I'm establishing good credit. That's the only reason I'm borrowing, because I'm playing the game. I'm hip to the strategy now. And so I'm only using it so that I can get good credit. Or you may be borrowing because you really need it, but just always remember, don't just apply for new credit and use credit cards all willy-nilly, because at the end of the day, it's someone else's money that you'll have to pay back. So once you establish your credit, how do you maintain it? So we talked about 30%. Again, 30% is so important. Stay below 30% of your credit limit. And a trick to do that is just make small purchases. You may just fill up the tank, and once you get the bill, pay it off. Fill up the tank again. Once your balance is back to zero, you get the next bill, pay that off. Because then they feel like, okay, every time I lend this person money, they pay me right back. And think how you would feel when somebody borrow money from you, you want them to pay you back. You don't want to wait. You don't want to have to harass them about giving you your money back. So make small purchases, something that you can afford. Once the bill comes, you can just pay it right off. And another good reason to do that is if you always bring your balances back to zero each month, you make a purchase for $38, you pay it right back, you won't be charged interest. So if you do not let your balance roll over to the next month and you pay them off, then they can't charge you for using your credit card. Yeah, I don't want to make it too confusing, so I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, that's a really good way. So if you start off with a secure credit card, you have a very, very high interest rate, just make small purchases so you can pay it right off, because the longer you wait to pay it, Bri, I saw you. Okay. The longer
I have a question. So what do you do when you get all of these letters in the mail telling you you're pre-approved for things? Like, I feel like they come every day. So what does that even mean, that I'm pre-approved?
That means that they see something in you. They have pulled something. They either see that you are good a good steward of your money and you pay your bills on time, so they like, oh yeah, we want to lend to her, because the whole game is to lend to you so that they can make money. The way they make money is for you to spend, let your balance roll over so they can charge you interest. And so, yeah, you're pre-approved. Please take this money because we want you to spend it all so that your balance can start rolling over month to month. And every month we make money off of you taking too long to pay us back. And sometimes they'll send pre-approval credit cards if you have no credit, and that is very rare, but that would be considered predatory lending. They're preying on you because they know that you don't have any credit yet. So if you see this credit card in the mail, you might get excited and sign up. So it's either way.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Another way to maintain good credit is just paying your bills on time. We talked about that. Pay your bill before the balance rolls over. Monitor your credit score consistently. Annualcreditreport.com is a very good website. You can only pull your credit report from each credit agency one time, though, from annualcreditreport.com, one time per year. But those reports are very thorough, so I would suggest to pull one report every 3 months. Well, not every 3 months, but 4 months, I guess. And then in between time, you use creditkarma.com, which is a really good site to monitor. So when you log in and when you pull your credit reports yourself, it doesn't hurt you. When someone else pulls your report, it hurts you. And it stays on your report for 2 years, the fact that they even pulled it. But when you pull your report yourself, it does not hurt you. So you log on to creditkarma.com. You can log on every day if you want to and just see what your credit score is. And that way you'll see your numbers going up and down. So if you go above 30% for one of your credit cards, then you'll see your score and they'll tell you your utilization increased, and that's why your credit score decreased. So Credit Karma is a good website in addition to annualcreditreport.com. And then also creditkarma.com gives you a Vantage score. Like I said, I really don't want to make this complicated, but you have a bunch of different credit scores. Let's just put it like that. But your most important credit score for large purchases is called a FICO score. And a way that you can track your FICO score is if you have a credit union account. If you have a car loan, most of the time, those big loan, if you have a big loan, they'll give you your FICO score for free. So if you have a credit union account, if you have a car loan, if you have another large type of loan, just ask the lender if they give you FICO scores for free. For example, a lot of credit unions do. I have Michigan State University Federal Credit Union, and they give me my FICO score for free anytime I log on. So just remember, creditkarma.com, you're checking your Vantage score, but a FICO score is very important when you make large purchases. Those should be very similar though. So don't get too stressed out if you are only checking one more often. They should be very similar because the factors are the same. The algorithm for how they come up with the credit score are very, very similar. But I just wanted to make sure I let you all know that a FICO score is a little bit different from what Credit Karma gives you, which is a Vantage score. And we already talked about keeping old accounts open. So what is a good credit score? And I just want to mention, these numbers are not set in stone. So it all depends on the company that you're dealing with. If you are trying to get a car, they may look at your credit score and see that you have a 675. So look at the picture. 675 will technically fall within fair or average, but that dealership may look at it as good credit. Or you may have a 710. So that will be on this, it will fall into green, the good category, but the dealership may look at that as excellent. So don't get too stuck on these numbers. It's just to kind of show you the categories. You just want to make sure you're as close to 700 as possible. Let's put it like that, because a person that has a 720 credit score may get the same interest rate as someone with the 820, because it's more so just your report card. Like, they just want to see that you're capable of borrowing and paying back money. So a 4.0 compared to a 3.9, yeah, it's a difference, But at the end of the day, it's still good, and they can still see that you're capable of being responsible with your money. So now let's move on to budgeting. Oh, I'm sorry. I just have to mention one more thing on this part. One of the things I really noticed is that credit is a game to keep us in poverty. So when you have bad credit, you're in the red, so your credit score is 600, you literally pay more to live. And what I mean by that is your car note, I'll give a real life example, very transparent. I drive a 2016 Dodge Challenger. My car note is $250. Other people that drive that will probably pay $500-$600 if they don't have a good credit score. So when you have a bad credit score, they charge you more for things that you want. They think about when you go into the Sprint store, they run your credit and you have to give a security deposit. If you have a great credit score, they don't need a security deposit because they know you're going to pay your bill. If you have a bad credit score, your security deposit can be $500 because they don't trust you. So just understand, when you have poor credit, you charge more to live. When you have good credit, you pay less money for the same things that the next person can have, but you're just paying less because of your credit history, and they know that you're capable of having this good or service or whatever. You're capable of having this and being a good steward of your money. So once I realized that, it really put things into perspective, because that's really how we have to break these generational cycles of poverty, is learning this financial literacy and passing the information on so that we won't keep being charged more to live. Someone who's getting paid $30,000 a year, paying the same car, driving the same car, but they're paying $500 for this car, compared to someone who's making $80,000 a year and they're paying $250 for the car. So I just really want to put that into perspective, because it's all a game. But once you figure out the strategy and you know how to make it work for you, then you're good to go. So now we move on to budgeting. Just wanted to start with, where do I start? If you're thinking you know what a budget is, but you don't really know where to start with budgeting, first thing you do is track your spending so you can figure out what categories you need to put into your budget. Second thing you do is identify your expenses, and that is, your bills. So what bills do you pay every month? What type of expenses come up every month? Then you identify your sources of income. So you know how much you make. You know your expenses and how much how much money you're spending each month. And so now you have your income, and you can compare to see how much money you have left over after you take care of your expenses. And then the last step is just creating a plan. So that may be, okay, I'm gonna write down my budget and I'm gonna look at it once a month. So just put it in action and create a plan. So this is what an actual budget looks like. And that's just like a screenshot. I actually want to show you all one that I really kind of did a little bit more thoroughly. So at the top of a budget are your pay dates. Then you have your income, so like we talked about. So this person has two different sources of income. This may be their full-time job, income number one. Income number two is just maybe they side hustle. I don't know, they do hair or something on the side. And so you put your income at the top. Then you list all your monthly expenses. And you want to put these expenses, you're arranging by due dates, just so it doesn't get confusing. So whatever's due on the first, you put up at the top. Whatever's due at the end of the month, you put at the bottom. So you see this person, they have a roommate, so they only pay $500 per month in rent. And this is broken down every 2 weeks, so I don't want to confuse you. Let me actually hide this column. So if we're looking at October, they get paid twice in October. So every time they get paid, they just put $250 up because they know that their rent will be $500. So then another thing to put into perspective is your budget should include everything. So you may say, okay, I'm about to go off to college. I want to get me an apartment. Understand, it's not that simple. You have rent, you have water. If it's not included, you need to pay internet. You may have an electric bill, a gas bill. Do you listen to Apple Music, Spotify, whatever? Got to put that in your budget. You have a credit card, put that in your budget. Homeowner's insurance. So it's literally breaking down all of your expenses. Your cell phone bill, car note, card insurance, student loans, because like we said, you will have to pay those back. So that will eventually be incorporated into your budget. So this purple, that's your fixed expenses. So those are expenses that you know will come every single month. These are variable expenses. You also know that these will come every month, but I mean, they can fluctuate and they aren't set in stone. But savings should technically be all the way at the top, but I just wanted to categorize it so you all can see. But you have savings, you got money for food, groceries, gas to put in the car. You may have to go to the laundromat if you don't have a washer and dryer. So I just wanted to break it down so you can see you literally put any and everything in your budget. Fun money, going out, going bowling, going to the movies. I don't know, whatever you consider fun, that's what you budget. You might get your hair done, haircut. That's $50 every 2 weeks. Put that in your budget. Shopping, get your nails done, eyebrows done. Put that in your budget. Miscellaneous is like toilet paper, toothpaste, toothbrush, random stuff that come up that you don't even think about. So you want to have a category that you can pull from just in case something happens. And lastly, the dark purple, these are temporary categories. So you may have a cruise coming up. Mom's birthday might be coming up. Christmas might be coming up. So you also want to incorporate at the very bottom of your budget things that you're going to spend money on, but they're not like fixed expenses. And so that way, okay, so the cruise is coming up. So we see right here, we have $259 remaining. And this is where I am now. So, okay, I can put $200 towards my cruise off of that check. And then I could put another 100 off of this check. So it's just this is literally put into perspective. You just want to see where your money is going. A budget is not restrictive. It's not limiting. You know, if you, whatever you do is fine. Just put it in your budget so that you can see where the money is going and like how you're spending it. And if you go over in one category, you'll also see where you have to pull from. So you spent $150 shopping. So that means you may have to pull 50 from your savings because, you know, you really don't have anywhere else to pull from by the end of the month or something like that. So
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So how do you feel about, could you go back to the spreadsheet? Yes. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about putting bills or anything on auto pay?
If you're responsible enough to manage it properly, it's a good idea because you won't even have to think about it. Maybe you need to set up an account that bills only come out of and it's not an account that's connected to your debit card. That way you're not overspending or making a mistake and spending bill money because it hasn't been automatically deducted yet. But I highly recommend it if you can keep up with it and you budget properly. Because if you don't, you know, they'll try to pull it and then you get hit with a fee because the money wasn't there.
Right. So there's nothing wrong with having multiple bank accounts and utilizing multiple banks.
There is nothing wrong with having multiple bank accounts. I will say if you have multiple bank accounts, at least have one credit union account. Credit unions are better than banks because when you become a credit union member, you technically have a share in the credit union. Banks, you're just a customer, a consumer. So credit unions are better because you get better fee. When you get charged fees, they'll be lower. If you need to get like a car loan, your interest rate will be lower. So you can have multiple bank accounts and just make sure if you do, try to at least get one credit union account.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm trying to go fast because this is going by so the time is just like flying. Okay, we're almost at the end. Now we move on to, I wanted to mention one more thing, savings. If you don't think that you can save a lot right now, that's another misconception that I get is that I don't make a lot of money, so I can't save. And that is totally not true. Even if you save $5 a month, if you have to save $5 from each check, then just start somewhere. Put some money to the side for savings because remember, when something happens, you want to be able to borrow from yourself instead of borrowing from the credit card company. If you don't have to borrow from them, don't. So saving is so important and you really, really, really want to put it into your budget. And you see on this slide, So the paydays are different and everything. This is a completely different budget, but you see the first week, this person say 50, and then that next week they say 150. So you may have to play with the numbers. You may have to just get creative with it, but just try to put something to the side. Like I said, even if it's $5, $10, but once you start getting into the habit and you see those $5 and $10 adding up, you'll inevitably start saving more. So just really wanted to reiterate the savings part because that's very important to put into your budget. Okay, now almost done for real this time. Paying for your education. So you are ready to graduate. You're ready to go off to college because everybody is telling you, you need to go to college, you need to go to college, you need to go to college. Cool. Just understand that, you know, it's always pros and cons. So paying for your education, college is not free. Be careful with how many student loans you take out because you will have to pay them back. We showed you in the budget, and eventually you will have to incorporate it into your budget. Another thing to know with student loans that I really wish I would have known is debt to income ratio. So if you take out a bunch of student loans during your undergraduate or graduate career, that'll come back to you in the end. So say, for example, you have $100,000 in student loans, but you've been out of college for 10 years and now you're ready to buy a house. They're going to be like, oh, but you owe $100,000 in student loans. So your debt to income ratio tells us you may not be able to afford a house because you only make $40,000 a year. You owe Sally Mae or whoever $100,000, but you're only making $40,000 a year. So to them, that does not look good. So just know the loans that you're taking out now, you can ball and with your refund checks and all that, but just know you have to pay it back first. And then second, it will also show up in the long run if you don't, you know, pay it right back off. So debt to income ratio is very important. Apply for scholarships and grants. I know we always hear that, but there are so many scholarships that I've heard that only 2-3 people apply for. So maybe you won't go online and find a scholarship that's on FAFSA. You may find a scholarship at church. You may find a scholarship at the Boys and Girls Club. You may find a scholarship just somewhere where you know someone and you can network, you can get your application in. Just try to get your school paid for. Scholarships and grants, you do not have to pay back. So try to get that free money. And then another thing is that you have options. You can go to a training program. College isn't for everyone. So maybe you want to start off, you want to go to nursing school, but the time is not right now. You don't want to take out student loans. You don't really have money to pay for that. You can find you a grant. And the grant that I'm thinking of, if you have a pen in front of you, write down WIOA. Those grants pay for people to get certifications. So you may not start nursing school right out of high school, but you can get certified to become a phlebotomist. You can become a medical assistant. You can get some experience first. And this certification was paid for because it was paid for by WIOA. And so you go to this training program, you get you some experience, you make you some money, you start saving a little bit, and then you may transfer to a university. Or you may go to a community college first and then transfer to a university. So be strategic. You don't have to go, and I'm not downplaying universities because I went to 2, but I feel the student loan is just really heavy on my heart. So just be smart with how you do it. I just really wish I would have known how to play the game a little bit better because I just would not have all of these student loans now. But just remember that you have options. And this is the last slide. So just wanted to leave you all with a couple fun facts. The 3 major credit reporting agencies that we were talking about, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. So those are the 3 credit reporting agencies. The most commonly used credit scores are Vantage and FICO. So I mentioned that Vantage is the one that Credit Karma reports, and then your FICO score is the one that people check when you're trying to apply for a larger loan. Collections items remain on your credit report for 7 years. So if Verizon is calling you, you're not answering the phone, they send your account to collections, that will be on your report card or your credit report for 7 years. If you go to Target, give them your social security number, they pull your credit report, that's a hard inquiry. That stays on your credit report for 2 years. But after the 7 years and the 2 years are up, they'll automatically fall off. But just know that they will stay on there for a while because, again, it's your report card. And then lastly, positive closed accounts may stay on your report for 10 years. So don't get upset if you see an account that's been closed for forever and it's still on your report. Maybe it was positive and they just want to help you out by keeping it on there so that other creditors can see that you've had this account for a while and you were in good standing with it. And that is it.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Welcome.
I am impressed with Curry Financials. This was absolutely amazing. I just have a few questions that I wanted to go ahead and ask. And one is, I know you talked about in the very beginning about the authorized user and everything like that. Can you reiterate that for any adults that may be listening that don't know how they could possibly start building their child's credit?
So you literally just call the bank and you add that person onto your account, and they'll send you a card with that person's name on it, but you don't have to give them the card. You can just keep the card in your possession, and every time you make a payment, it'll positively impact the person that you put on the account. But if you miss a payment, it'll mess them up. So whatever you do, whatever type of interactions you have will also reflect on the other person's credit report.
Got it. What kind of advice do you have for someone who just opened their first bank account and they are about to go off to school, or they're about to just enter adulthood in general? You got this card, right, that you can take to the store and swipe it, and, boom, you can walk out the store with it, whatever, as long as it's in your checking account, or, what do you have to say to the person who's just starting off?
Create a budget. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to spend. It's okay to go shopping. It's okay to get your nails done. It's okay to get your hair done. But just budget it. Like, just see where the money is going. So whenever you get money in your account, even if it's $50, you can budget that. You might want to spend $25 on a movie ticket, taking somebody to the movies, 10 here, 5, I don't know, like, just budget it. So that's really important. It's just seeing where it's going. You just want to see where the money is going.
Awesome. I think that's super important because you get it. And I know in adulthood, I feel like I don't get it. Like, I get it and it is just like, like it's gone instantly. But one thing I can just briefly share is I purchased my first home last April, and it was interesting because, as Brianna said, the debt to income ratio is real. And I chose to go to a university that at the time cost like $30,000 a year. And, you get a grant here, scholarship there. But in the end, when it's all said and done, when it's all done and said, you owe money. And so one thing that I've always done, and what saved me and what ultimately helped me with buying my first home, was the fact that I never deferred my loans. I called and I told them, like, I can't pay with what's on this paper, but I'm not trying to hide from you. Mm-hmm. I know that I went to school and I know that this is how much I owe, but how can we work this out? And so I've always, ever since 6 months after I graduated, have been paying and paying and paying. And so that is what saved me when it was time to purchase my home. It was the fact that, okay, you owe, but you've been paying on it, like, and you're trying. And so that makes a huge difference. And I, know people that are in the home buying process now that are, getting, higher interest rates than myself. And it's just interesting to see just paying on your student loans, even though, like, it sucks. It's not fun, but that's going to be one of your largest. It's a large purchase that doesn't feel like a purchase. Like, just because you didn't go in the store and buy your student loan and walk out, it was one of those purchases that it just developed over time. It just rolled over until graduation. So you walked out of the store with your student loan at graduation. So I definitely, to those who are just about to go into that process of borrowing money for their education, it's so important to keep in mind that you have to pay that back. And so my question is, what are your thoughts when it comes to a refund check? What's, like, when you get that refund check and you're thinking ball out till I fall out, what's the first thing that you would suggest doing?
Well, first off, I would suggest not to take out too much more than what you need. So whatever your classes cost, figure out how much tuition costs, how much are books, what are the necessities that you need to pay for. Get that number and try not to take too much extra. I mean, we want to get a refund and ball out. So that's my first suggestion. Mm-hmm. Now, if you decide to go ahead and take out more and ball out, budget it. Mm-hmm. Budget it. Put into perspective that you will have to pay this back. Just don't take out too much more, because then the budget in it is just pointless, because you're budgeting $3,000 that's not yours. Like, that's me having, again, a shoebox with $3,000 and you're budgeting my money. So don't just take out what you need and just maybe a little bit more to have fun.
Right.
Don't overdo it.
Right. And so one thing I found very interesting that you talked about, and I think that I don't know how serious people take it. And so I just want you to go over it again, is that 30% utilization on the credit card. Because what happens is you'll go online and you'll see that they gave you $10,000. Like, here's $10,000. And you see it and you see that the little line isn't going all the way up there. Like, you're not using it and you feel obligated to use it, right? And so one thing that I've learned in my life is that even when I went over that 30% and I'm like, oh, let me pay this back, they give you more money. They're like, oh, like, here's some more. And you're just like, what? And so how, like, what, one, can you reiterate that 30%? And I guess, I don't know if it's like a discipline thing, like, what's the best way to go about just remembering what that means to cross that 30%, what that leads you into?
So just remember, most of the time when you go over 30%, you aren't able to pay it all right back. And that's the way that they game you. That's how they make money off of you, because they want you to spend as much as possible so that your balance can roll over so that they can charge you interest. Mm-hmm. If you spend small amounts, pay it off, that's one thing. But if you're like just right at the 30%, then that looks good on your report card, your credit report, because they see, okay, she has a $1,000 credit card, but she only using $300. That means she must have her finances together. Why she don't need to borrow from us? Mm-hmm. You know, why she got a savings account? Mm-hmm. Where they do that at? So that's how they look at it. So just remember, it's someone else's money. 30%. If you do not remember anything else from today, please remember 30%. Do not ever go over 30%. And if you do, then you just know that you're doing it, and then you can see, your score fluctuate. And I'm sure you, like you said, you went and paid it when you realized you went over. Mm-hmm. So we still mess up, we aren't perfect. And even if you have the game figured out, you still might run into a hardship, or you got to go to 50%. Mm-hmm. But at least you'll know my credit score about to drop as soon as I swipe this card. Mm-hmm. And I need to get it back to 30% as soon as possible. So
yeah, I remember the first time I forgot to pay my credit card bill, and it was weird because they called me, and I'd never gotten a call about a bill before. And so when they called me, I was just like, well, first it was like, basically like, Bank of America, this is, if you're Brianna, press 1. And I'm like, what's going on? And I fell right for the trick, pressed 1. And then it was this lady like, hey, like, you owe balance. And I was like, I totally, I just forgot. Like, it was just, sorry, I can right now. And it's so important to just not be moving too fast that you forget something like that. Luckily, at that point that I was at, my credit card wasn't being charged interest. And so I could have been a lot worse off having to pay even more than what I originally had, spent. But so when you get stuff in the mail, like no interest for a year or no interest for 2 years, what does that mean?
That means that they won't charge you for using the card, but that means that they're just warming you up. No interest for a year. So you're like, oh, I don't have to pay interest for a year. Let me ball out. And that's what they want you to do. But to your point, Bree, another reason why you want to have good history, you want to make it your credit card, your credit report, your report card positive, is because when you are late, you can call and say, I forgot. Can you waive this fee? And if you have positive history, they'll reverse the fee for you because they like, okay, you're good every other month. So you really did forget this month. So that's why it's so important to build that positive reputation with your credit, because you can make those type of calls when they trust you, and then they reverse that fee and you're good. So just be intentional.
Yes. Do you have any last words that you want to leave anyone that's listening? This also will be replayed in the future, so you can talk thinking in the future. But if there's any last words of encouragement that you want to give, please do so before we wrap up. And I've learned so much today, just thinking about like some things you think you already know, right? And then you think you know how important they are. But then when you have somebody like putting it in a chart and they like, this is how important it is. It's always good to, no matter where you are with your life or your budgeting, or whether you bought a house, a car, anything, like a purse, whatever, like just to go back to the basics and just remember, okay, you didn't got comfortable. You don't go back to your spreadsheet and create your budget anymore. Go back to using your spreadsheet. Like, don't ever get too comfortable in your finances. And so that's why this webinar was open to all ages in the first place, because I'm like, oh, we can all use a refresher. Like, it doesn't matter. And so as a financial expert, is there anything that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, the main thing is just don't be scared. Don't be nervous. People are nervous when they hear the word budget, and they're nervous to look at the credit reports. So don't be nervous. Just face it and just get somebody on your side that can help you. So if you know somebody that's good with financing and managing their money, just ask them for help, or go on webinars like this and take notes and learn yourself, so that we won't have to keep paying these credit repair people. You need to know it yourself so you can teach your child, your mother, your mom will listen to you. If you get this credit thing down pat and you try to pass that knowledge up, your mom will listen to you before she goes to the library and sit in a credit repair class. Like, so we really have to break these cycles. I want to encourage us to break these generational cycles of poverty. Learn this information. Stop taking the easy way out and paying people to do it. Learn this information. Do it yourself. Teach your brother, teach your aunt, teach your cousin, so that we can really start managing money properly and not just having to live a life where you always worried about the next paycheck and when it's going to come. So that's my word, my words of wisdom. Is just face it. Like, it's your money. You are the boss of it. Don't let it be the boss of you, because money can make or break your livelihood. It can determine whether you're homeless or not. It can determine what kind of car you drive. It determines what kind of house you buy. It determines your whole livelihood. So if you learn early, you will live a different lifestyle for the rest of your life if you are hip to the strategies and you know what you're doing, compared to someone who didn't know, and they may end up in a way worse situation. So that is the main thing. And also, another thing I want to say is I'm really passionate about teaching this information to our youth. So if you know of a Boys and Girls Club, of a nonprofit that you are participating with, if you know an agency that's willing to bring this type of information in, and I can come to you and teach, your friends, and we can meet once a month so that we can really become financially lit. We talk about being lit in all these other type of ways. Let's be financially lit. Let's be financially literate. Like lit. That's lit when you are able to manage properly. So if you know of anyone, then just let them know about Curry Financial, because I really, really, really want to get this out and start breaking these cycles of poverty.
Absolutely. Well, behalf on Detroit Speaks, we are so happy to have you on here today. And what's cool about this is that this is our first webinar of the year. So we do these quarterly, and quarterly, just different seasons for everything. So right now we're in the new year and everybody's like, I'm getting it together right now. Like one of the things we like to get together in the new year is finances, right? We want to get in the gym. We want to, get our money together. And we wanted to start the year like this. Like, let's talk about it. Before we get to June and everybody's trying to ball out on vacations, or you're about to start college and you're trying to purchase everything under the sun for your dorm on your credit card. Like there's so many things to think about. And so we will be reiterating this conversation throughout the entire year. We have a number of workshops coming up, and I'm just excited for us to be able to utilize the knowledge that was dropped today throughout 2019. No matter where you are in your financial life, we are encouraging you to be responsible, and we're encouraging you to really think about sustainability and your livelihood, as Brianna said. So thank you all for joining. We are logging off, and we will share the PowerPoint with you. And if you have any questions or want to contact Brianna, we will share that information with you too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.